Okay, so I went through some of my old videos, like I went through a lot of them today, and I noticed two things. One, you can tell that in most of my videos, I literally just like took my hair out of a ponytail and then like brushed it real fast before most of them. Because guys, I don't plan ahead and I don't think about those things. And I definitely don't, including today. See, like it's like smushed on the top and then you can usually see this line. And yeah, so if you guys have been paying attention, welcome to part of Sarah's world. And then the second thing I noticed was that if you go back to the beginning, this wall behind me is like completely empty except for this sword. Like it's totally blank. But if you look at it now, see, like there's you can watch each video. You can watch the progression of the cards. They like start out here and then they go further up, and now they're like all the way over there, which I found interesting to watch progress. However, that's not why we're here. My name is Sarah Willoughby. I am the author of He's Making Diamonds, A Teen's Thoughts on Faith Through Chronic Illness, and the host of the Diamonds Conference, which is a free online conference for Christians with chronic illnesses. Today, let's talk about writing. Writing is hard. Chronic illness is hard, but I'm living proof that it's not impossible. And so I want to talk today less about writing when you have a chronic illness and more about writing about a chronic illness. And so we've talked about this from the nonfiction perspective in some ways, and we've talked about it from the fiction perspective in some ways too. But today I want to talk about how to write about chronically ill characters, how to write a character who has a chronic illness, a health challenge, something like that. And so I have 4 tips specifically for this. So number 1, remember that it affects all of life. You know, it's one thing to be like, okay, we're gonna do like this, get to, you know, add some depth to the character, give them this diagnosis, and then forget about it for the rest of the book. Like, okay, we're going to talk about it in this one scene. Oh, let's make this character sympathetic. But then we forget about it for the rest of the book. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works in real life. And so, I mean, give them a tragic backstory that's not currently affecting their life if that's the way that you want to do it. But if you're going to write a character who has a chronic illness, make sure that you are remembering that that's going to affect the different things that they can physically do, that it's going to affect the way that they see the world, it's going to affect them emotionally and mentally. And to write that accurately, you need to remember that it's going to affect all of life. You know, like it's not something that people who have chronic illnesses can take a break from. It's not something that we can just take a vacation from or stop thinking about, but it's something that we continually need to think about, and something that I would really encourage you to look into if you're not familiar with it is the spoon theory. You know, just Google spoon theory, and it really does a great job of explaining how this has to be a daily, throughout the day thing, and what that looks like for each individual person, for each individual diagnosis is going to look differently, and we'll get there in a minute. But I just want to encourage you, don't forget about this for the rest of the book. If you're going to do that, don't give them that illness at all. Number 2, remember, this is to contrast to number 1. So don't forget that this affects all of life. But on the other hand, remember that there is more to the character than just their diagnosis, just their chronic illness, even if it's like undiagnosis. Like, remember that there's more to them than that. I've written a book on faith in God and chronic illness. I started a ministry, built a business around this. There's so much of my life is affected by this. I spend lots of time at the doctor's office. I spend lots of time needing to care for my body, needing to consider things. It affects the way that I interact and engage with the world, with people. You know, I have to continually be thinking about it, but I am not my chronic illness. There is so much more to me than that. You know, like, I love sword fighting. I love jewelry making. I love reading. I love writing. I love engaging with people, interacting with people. I'm quirky and creative and weird, and there's a lot of that has nothing to do with my chronic illness. And so it's important to remember that there's more to your character than just that. It shouldn't just be, it's not accurate to write someone who's literally, their whole point in the story is to be an example of chronic illness. Like, maybe there's a place for that when in raising awareness, but at the same time, I think to write an an accurate, well-rounded character, you need to remember that there's so much more to them than that. And their point in your story should be so much more than that. You know, it's not, your characters should move your story forward. They should play the important part. Otherwise, why are they there? I would ask you that. And I want to preface this with, I am a nonfiction writer. I've done lots of trainings on fiction writing, and I read a ton of fiction books. I have a chronic illness, but I am a nonfiction writer, so talk to some fiction writers too. Number 3, don't magically make them better, because I do want to have a balance here, because there is a point where, you know, like personally in my life, my health has improved. I am functioning almost like a normal person, and at one point I was dying and bedridden because of my chronic illness. And so there is a wide range of things. There are seasons of flare-ups, there are seasons of having more ability and energy, there are times where you do improve and you do get to get your life back, although I hesitate to use that term. But it affects, it doesn't, very, very rarely does someone, chronic illness, chronic doesn't mean there's a cure. Often, let me start that sentence again. Chronic often means there is no cure. There is no like medically available thing to get better by Act 3. Like, you know, and that's okay. You don't have to be healed to have a happy ending. Your character doesn't have to be healed physically to have a happy ending. It's okay if they still have this as part of their life. And there are times, you know, like, there's so many emotional components that a character can get into with this, you know, like hoping and still trying, and at the same time accepting and figuring out that balance. But if you magically make them better, someone with a chronic illness is going to read it and go, okay, like, I love that. And sometimes it can be encouraging, but sometimes it also is like, that's not how it works. That's not what my experience has been. You know, it's been 20 years, it's been 40 years. This is still my life. And it's reality, not fiction. But we often want our fiction to reflect reality. And so I'm not saying that you don't give them that happy ending, or you don't give them that health, you know, like regaining their physical health. Because in a lot of cases, I think that can be really great, and that can be something that happens, that's powerful, that's great for the character, great for the story, great for the reader. But I also just want to caution you, and part of that too is not just for the chronically ill reader, but for the healthy reader who's reading it and going, oh yeah, they did this and that, they're fine now. Why isn't my chronically ill friend, you know, why everyone with a chronic illness has gotten those, here, if you just do this magical thing, you'll be better. Why haven't you done it already? It's like, okay, well, I've been to 17 doctors, and I've done all of these treatments, and I've done all of these things, and I'm trying, and I'm praying, and I'm believing, and I'm still here in this spot. And so I don't know, just that's a balance. You can tell I'm passionate about this. Finally, number 4, get a sensitivity reader, because I can tell you all these general things, but it is going to totally depend on your diagnosis, on your character, on your story. And so get a sensitivity reader, someone who has that experience, who can read your specific story and say, oh, hey, this thought is something that I don't think that that's accurate, or don't forget, like, here, you know, they're going to be able to say this is accurate, or this is inaccurate, or not my experience. And even, you know, getting multiple sensitivity readers, if at all possible, I would recommend. So that's what I've got for you today. 4 tips for writing chronically ill characters. Happy writing. Comment down below what other videos you'd love to see from me. Are you writing a chronically ill character? Have you written a chronically ill character? I would love to hear, like genuinely, I do want to hear that. I know that people say this at the end of the video, like, okay, comment about this. I actually want to hear. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.